Hello, good evening. It is your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, and today's date is Sunday, October 26th, 2025. The time is 6:10 p.m., and I am in Miami, Florida. The topic of today's lecture is Impetus Scapegoating. And before I get into the main talking points of this lecture, I would like to address two matters. The first is the cerebral capacity of my stalkers. And when I say my stalkers, I'm talking about a trio. I'm talking about the liaisons who start the action, the undercover operatives who may or may not work in a military, law enforcement, or semi-law enforcement capacity. And I'm talking about the stalkers themselves who do not work for the state at all, nor have they sworn oaths of service, nor have they taken an oath to protect and serve, but they're rather random U.S. citizens who have been plugged into a state-sanctioned signaling mechanism that points them to this location and that, typically in the direction of a targeted individual or someone who has been entered as a targeted individual, so they can descend upon him and pester, annoy, and worse on cue. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato said 300 years before Christ, give or take, the complexity of politics is if you don't go into politics yourself, then you're doomed to be ruled by your inferiors. And that's something that I felt very strongly in my personal life with respect to clandestine gang stalking and the people around me. Everyone who's ever worked for a company has had this feeling: I'm more capable than my manager, or I'm more capable than my assistant manager, or I'm more capable than the team lead. Okay, in the corporate sphere, one might reason within himself or herself, I'm more capable than my district manager or the regional vice president or the chairman of the board. Okay, and there are people that serve in very high capacities in companies, like people who serve on the board of various auxiliaries, who believe that they're more capable than the CEO of the company, etc., etc. And on the flip side of that, if you look at sports, for example, or entertainment, sure, I'm sure there are athletes that look at their coach and say, I know more about this game than my coach. Or there could be movie actors or stagehands in a film production that say, I'm more capable than the director of this film, or I know more about movie making than the executives in this film. That's not uncommon. It is not uncommon for people in subordinate positions in companies, okay, to believe that they are more capable than their superiors, and they might be. Okay, it's not terribly healthy to vocalize that or communicate that to anybody, because if it gets back to your superior, there could be a conflict there that could negatively impact you or the company. So it's best in those situations to just do your best and let your work do the talking. And it doesn't stop there. There are people in governmental capacities or people who work for the state who may reason that same thing. I mean, I'm sure there are Army cadets that feel like they have a better handle on what it takes to be a good soldier than their sergeant. I'm sure there are sergeants in the U.S. Armed Forces that believe they have more military acumen than their captains or lieutenants. And I'm sure there are captains or lieutenants who believe that they would make better generals than the sitting generals. You see? And even when you look at political matters, I mean, I'm sure that there are city council people that believe that they're better wards of the state than the mayor. I'm sure there are mayors that believe they're better wards of the state than the governor. I'm sure there are governors that believe that they're better wards of the state than senators or Congress people. And obviously there are senators and Congress people that believe that they're better at identifying the needs of the American people than the president. That's why so many people who run for president are governors, senators, and Congress people, because they have identified inefficiencies in the executive office that they themselves believe that they can remedy and that they can make better leaders than those who are already in office. And ultimately, it's up to the people to decide who the better leader is. But really, across the occupational spectrum, there's not a single job that exists where certain subordinates feel that they're better than those in authority of them. It simply is, it's human nature. And some of those people are right, some of those people are wrong, but ultimately, your work has to do the talking. I'm in that position myself with my gang stalkers. I don't believe that the people that I have surveilling, disrupting, interfering with, and pestering me are smarter or more industrious or more fortuitous than I am. As a matter of fact, the overwhelming vast majority of the gang stalkers that I've encountered in Ohio, Tennessee, and in Florida are quite dumb. And quite frankly, I'm of the mindset that a lot of the stalkers that I've encountered that have used signaling mechanisms and other mechanisms to pester me personally do not have the IQ that I have. They do not have the capabilities that I have. They are not more observant or vigilant than I am, and they are not more quick-witted than I am. Okay? This is me being honest about the current state of affairs in my clandestine gang stalking campaign. The people that are around me, the people that they got pestering me, are not on my level in anything. Okay? That constitutes a person being studious or conscientious or any of the virtues or qualities that are applied to a person who is productive. Okay, the people that I got around me, the people that you all have, and I'm talking to my liaisons here, the people y'all are signaling my way. Okay, these jokers you got jumping on and off city buses that I'm on just to pester me for a quick second and then scurry off into the day or scurry off into the night or ride off into the sunset like the Lone Ranger. These people are deleterious and defective. Okay, and that's a big reason why a lot of people join this mechanism. It's so they can feel like they're a part of something, and it's so they can get an ego boost. Okay? These are not the kind of people where if I were a hiring manager at any company where the job being offered required responsibility or skill of any kind, The kinds of people being signaled to me on a daily basis are the kind of people whose resumes I would throw down the toilet the minute the interview is over. Okay? If these stalkers approaching me are in any capacity interviewing for jobs as gang stalkers, I feel sorry for the schmucks that commission those people to do anything. Okay? These are the kinds of people that could screw up a cup of coffee if you asked them to go get you one. But you have them using military and semi-military strategic signaling operations in an urban setting. For alleged national security or public safety reasons. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Okay? As a matter of fact, you liaisons, you undercovers, a lot of these people that you guys are signaling back and forth with, these are not the kind of people you would even invite into your own homes. A lot of these stalkers you guys are signaling back and forth with, pointing them at me and stuff, that's our guy, that's the one we want you to get in front of. A lot of those stalkers, if they were to come to your front porch and knock on your door and ask you for a glass of water, you'd slam the door in their face and call the police that somebody's trespassing on your property. Okay? You would not affiliate yourselves, you liaisons and you undercovers, you would not affiliate yourselves with a lot of the stalkers that you interact with, that you point signals with, that you instruct, that you guide, that you direct, that you signal into the general vicinity of a targeted person that's been predetermined. Okay? Those people that you signal, that you point, that you direct to the target, these are not people that you would ever invite to your child's birthday party. These aren't the kind of people that you would ever associate yourself with. As a matter of fact, a lot of these people, if they were to invite you guys to a birthday party, you would make an excuse not to go. But that's okay. Gang stalkers don't have to like each other to work with each other. The same is true in most workplaces. I mean, it helps for the employees to like one another, but they don't have to. People can work well together who don't like each other. It happens on sports teams too. You don't have to like everybody on your team to work well with them in your respective sports. But gang stalkers, you guys are working in a state capacity here, using military, semi-military, and then law enforcement and semi-law enforcement protocols, stratagem, and technology. And a lot of you, if you were to cross paths in a grocery store and you weren't using signals with each other, if you hadn't been pre-informed that there were stalkers in the area and that you needed to communicate with them to locate a targeted person or another suspicious person, you would not speak to them. You would not talk to them. You wouldn't even so much give them a pat on the back and say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Okay? And these are the kinds of jokers that I got following me around. People that can't even stand one another. A lot of these stalkers signal one another and they never see each other again. They just happen to know a signal when they see one. Some stalkers see a signal or they hear a verbal command and they look at the person sending the signal and they know from experience who that person is referencing and who they have identified as a target. At that point, it's up to each stalker to determine if they want to descend upon that target or not. I got a bunch of useful idiots using state resources to control the trajectory of my life. And a lot of these people are simply not up to par. They're not up to standard. And quite frankly, they look a little aloof, and some of them look downright stupid. But these are the people that I have in charge of my gang stalking campaign. You all look like a bunch of childish, hostile, pandering, thuggish nitwits. And I'm sorry that the United States federal establishment, particularly its Congress, authorized broad and vague powers for its intelligence apparatus and its national security apparatus to mobilize you people. They don't know they've mobilized an army of idiots. Ladies and gentlemen, the second matter I would like to get into is the situation that has transpired with respect to this sports betting conundrum that has been investigated by the FBI. Over the past week, there were a number of arrests, I think 35 arrests of people in New York City for running an underground illegal gambling ring where they used high-tech, sophisticated cheating mechanisms, and they cheat a number of customers out of a total of $7 million. And the customers thought that they were participating in a legit underground mafia-styled illegal gambling ring, I guess. And they ended up getting cheated collectively out of $7 million by these people who participated in this underground gambling ring. And two of the people were NBA personalities. There was a coach, Chauncey Billups, and a player, Terry Rozier, who were arrested during this thing, although I think Rozier was arrested for rigging betting spreads and faking injuries on the court to facilitate those betting spreads that he told people before the game, bet money that I'm not going to score more than 8 points today, or bet money that I'm not going to play more than 15 minutes today, or bet money that I'm not going to have more than 5 rebounds, or bet money that I'm not going to have more than 2 steals today. Okay, he told his friends that. And then he faked an injury on the court so that all those bets would become valid and of value. And I think his friends made something like $300,000 off of those bets because they knew beforehand that he was going to take himself out of the game and not have his usual numbers. So, and then Chauncey Billups, the former NBA Finals MVP, if I'm not mistaken, former Detroit Pistons All-Star. He's now a coach in the NBA. He was arrested for participating in this illegal gambling mechanism. Now, here's what I wanted to point out about this gambling ring and how it ties into clandestine gang stalking. So this is an extremely sophisticated signal-based cheating mechanism that used high-end technology to cheat people out of millions of dollars, right? Now keep something in mind. Anyone who participates in an underground, unsanctioned gambling ring deserves to lose money. Okay? What do you think, that the odds are going to be more in your favor when you gamble because the dealers are underground? or not sanctioned? Okay, go to a casino. The odds are better at a casino because at a casino, there are federally regulated rules and regulations that the casino has to follow to make sure that the betting is fair. If you use an underground gambling ring, there are no federal regulations in place to make sure that this gambling ring is being fair or honest. So which would you rather pick? The casino, where there are federal regulations to make sure that the gambling that takes place there is fair and honest? Or would you rather gamble with a underground syndicate that's mob run that has no such regulations in place? Of course you're going to go with the casino. Anyhow, some of the things people do with their money is unbelievable. So a bunch of people got cheated out of money. And as the indictment goes, the Bonanno, Genovese, and Gambino organized crime families, as well as Jinhu, Ernest Aiello, Julius Ziliani, Thomas Gallardo, Lee Fama, Joseph Lani, Ruggiero, Matthew Didino, Nelson Alvarez, Luis Apicella, Amar Awode, there are a ton of names going out there that have been publicly, that have been made public by the FBI about this underground gambling ring. Now, here's why I think this is why I think this gambling ring is striking. So I'm going to read a paragraph of the Department of Defense, their press release on the arrests made in this underground gambling ring, and I'm going to tie this in to some of the mechanisms that I see present in gang stalking. So here's a paragraph. In a typical legitimate poker game, and mind you, this is describing how the underground operation worked. In a typical legitimate poker game, a dealer uses a shuffling machine to shuffle the cards randomly before dealing them to all the players in a particular order. As set forth in the indictment, the rigged games use altered shuffling machines that contain hidden technology, allowing the machines to read all the cards in the deck. Because the cards were always dealt in a particular order to the players at the table, the machines could determine which player would have the winning hand. This information was transmitted to an off-site member of the conspiracy, who then transmitted that information via cell phone back to a member of the conspiracy who was playing at the table, referred to as the quarterback or the driver. The quarterback then secretly signaled this information, usually by prearranged signals like touching certain chips or other items on the table, to other co-conspirators playing at the table who are also participants in the scheme. Collectively, the quarterback and other players on the scheme use this information to win poker games against unwitting victims who sometimes lost tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time. The defendants use other cheating technology as well, such as chip tray analyzers, essentially a poker chip tray that also secretly reads all the cards using hidden cameras, an X-ray table that could read cards face down on the table, and special contact lenses or eyeglasses that could read pre-marked cards. The defendants and their co-conspirators bet accordingly to ensure that the unsuspecting victims lost money. Through the rigged poker schemes, the defendants caused losses to victims of at least $7 million. And the members of the conspiracy are Tony Goodson, Shane Hennon, Curtis Meeks, Robert Stroud, who supplied the cheating technology. The defendants Amar Awade, Saul Belcher, John Gallo, Jin Hu, Stroud, and Seth Trustman organized the rigged games. Members of the cheating teams included the defendants Nelson Alvarez, Louis Apicella, Chauncey Billups, Eric Ernest, Marco Garzon, Jamie Gillett, Tony Goodson, Kenny Hahn, Hennon, Horatio Hu, Damon Jones, John Mazzola, Nicholas Minucci, Michael Renzulli, Angelo Ruggiero Jr., Stroud, Trustman, and Sophia Vey. In addition, the defendants Anthony Schneiderman, among others, laundered the proceeds of the schemes. So you see how vast, how technologically sophisticated, and how well-resourced and well-staffed this cheating ring was. How does this cheating ring remind you of gang stalking, Mr. Smith? Well, let's go down the list. I oftentimes assert that gang stalking, which I also refer to as cause stalking, hate stalking, community harassment, workplace mobbing, and covert war, uses a combination of sophisticated technology, signaling, personnel who has been pre-briefed, and then you have the unwitting victims. This poker scheme mirrors the gang stalking mechanism to a T. Okay? Now, the hidden technology allowed the machines that were around to secretly read the cards on the deck. Whoever had the winning hand, this information was transmitted to somebody who was not even in the casino, somebody who was off-site, via cell phone. When that person was told who had the winning hand at the poker table, then he would contact the quarterback, who is sort of the one that's in charge of that night's poker rigging. Okay? The quarterback signaled this information to the people playing at the table. People who were pre-taught what signal to look for and how to react to that signal. So the people who were playing the poker games at the table, who were co-conspirators, would be watching the dealer. If the dealer touched a certain if the dealer touched a certain item on the table, for example, maybe it's a coffee mug, maybe it's a Diet Dr. Pepper glass, maybe it's a chip of a certain color, or maybe it's a card of a certain color, or maybe he knocks his fist on the wood 3 times, or maybe he adjusts his glasses in a certain way. There are a ton of different signals that the dealer would use to signal to the people at the table who had the winning hand. And obviously, as with any poker game, you want the wagers to go as far up as possible. So there was a lot of what you might refer to as feinting, F-E-I-N-T-I-N-G, feinting, that went on at the table, people bluffing and so forth, so that people at the table would throw more chips on the table to make the winning hands haul even greater. Okay, the quarterback and the players on the scheme would use these various pieces of information to win poker games. They had X-ray machines on the poker table. They had X-ray machines on the ceilings. They had X-ray machines on the walls. They had X-ray machines on the floors. And these X-ray machines were able to look at people's hands in the poker game and transmit the information as to who had what hand to off-site members who would read this information and relay the information back to the poker table via cellular technology and signaling mechanisms. The people at the poker table would take these signals and use them to identify who had the winning hand, and they all threw into this thing together. After the poker game was over, money was divided between the schemers. And it doesn't say exactly how much each schemer brought in per night, but the total that these schemers robbed their patrons of over the course of this scheme was $7 million. So if you divide that up between 35 people, let's do a little math here. So 7 million divided by 35 people, that's $200,000 a person. Which, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, in this day and age is not a ton of money. It really isn't. So these people, these defendants, these 35 knuckleheads who set up this signal-based, technologically sophisticated game of poker, all basically lost their freedom and reputations for $200,000 each. They must have really wanted that $200,000, ladies and gentlemen. Now they're going to have federal felonies on their record for an indefinite period of time. They're going to have to pay back fees and restitution. Now they have to pay lawyers to help them get plea deals. And the whole entire scheme just doesn't seem worth it. Especially for the athletic personalities. They were already making 10, 20, $30 million a year each. And they're getting ready to lose all that so they could pull in $200,000 on a rigged poker game. And they're going to have criminal records. Who throws away $30 million a year so you can pull in money on a $200,000 poker game? Ladies and gentlemen, the useful idiots are out there. Okay? Each and every one of the defendants in this case is a useful idiot. And they allow themselves to be used by people who are probably smarter than they are to engage in a scheme that got them all busted. Quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, that's how gang stalking the program is going to end. It's going to end with every useful idiot, every undercover, every liaison that participates in this signal-based, technologically sophisticated thuggery getting busted. That's what's going to happen to these people, ladies and gentlemen. This poker game is a microcosm of gang stalking. Piece by piece, element by element, component by component, this rigged game of poker in which 35 people lost their name, their reputation, and their money so that they could reap a $200,000 reward on a rigged poker game, they're all going down. That shows you what a useful idiot is right there and what's going to happen to a useful idiot. People who allow themselves to become used by deleterious third parties in schemes that are designed to harm other people always go down and hit rock bottom in the end. I don't care if you are a member of the Department of Defense. I don't care if you are a member of the Department of Justice. I don't care what you do for a living or what your racial background is. If you participate in a signaling mechanism that's designed is to impede the progress of the United States citizens through their trajectory through this world, to hinder them from attaining success, okay, to stop them from grabbing their piece of American pie, okay, from living their constitutional rights out, from enjoying their rights and liberties and freedoms, being free from all this thuggery and manipulation that these stalkers use to attack targeted persons, particularly like myself who want nothing to do with them at all. You're going down. Your program has been exposed, buddy. And I can promise you, I use the term buddy lightly. I have never willingly or knowingly interacted in any depth with a gang stalker. Okay? Let's talk about impetus scapegoating, ladies and gentlemen. Impetus is when you try to speed up the process of something. Okay? What is the impetus? We'll use sports for an example. What is the impetus to making a teenage boy grow taller? Right? Let's say you have a teenage boy who loves the game of basketball, and he's eager to grow as tall as he can so he can have that physical advantage over his opponents on the opposing team. His father, who was a basketball player himself, looks at him and goes, wow, my son, he's 14 years old and 6 feet tall, but I really want to get him to 6'6". So he'll be that much closer to NBA ready. Well, you could wait until the boy turns 18 and see how tall he is. Right? That's a 4-year period. But this father wants his son to be that tall now so he can get his son up to 30 points a game, 15 rebounds, 5 assists, maybe a couple block shots, a couple steals a game, so he'll have those Division I stats. So we could send his son to a good Division I school and get a scholarship. And from there, maybe he could go pro if he's good enough. But how do we get this boy to 6'6" right now? Well, the impetus to that, if the father doesn't want to wait on his kid to grow 6 inches over the next 4 years, if he grows 6 inches over the next 4 years, the kid might grow 4 inches over the next 4 years. And going into his senior year, he's 6'4". But the dad wants him to go to 6'6". What's the impetus to getting your son to 6'6"? Well, you could give him performance-enhancing drugs. Sure, they're illegal, but they don't test for steroids and human growth hormones in the high schools these days. There are a lot of high school sports prospects that use HGH and all kinds of performance-enhancing drugs to make themselves superhuman in their respective athletic events. Okay, it's not just basketball. Sure, they do it in football, track and field, volleyball, baseball, tennis, swimming. Okay, there are lots of PEDs going around at the high school level in particular. They don't test for them in high school. So what's the impetus to getting this boy to 6'6"? Well, give him some HGH, the human growth hormone. Put him on the human growth hormone so he can make it to 6'6" by the time he's 17. They're not hard to find. You can go to any gym, any workout gym, anywhere in the country. There's always somebody in there that pumps steroids. Just look for the person who looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger and walk up to him and go, hey, I noticed your incredible Hulk-sized muscles there. Can you maybe direct me in the path of some sort of a supplement that could make me get that large? Or I want to be able to jump 40 or 50 inches off the ground. Maybe if you could recommend something, or maybe something that could make me grow 6 inches over the next 4 years. Or maybe you could recommend something to me that will allow me to run the 40-yard dash in 3.7 seconds. Or maybe you could recommend something to me, I don't know, that maybe I could throw a football 60 yards down the field. Anything. Is there anything you can recommend? Of course that guy's going to say, yeah, I know some people. He'll say, I'll put you in touch with some people. You pay me this amount of money, I'll put you in touch with who I know. Well, what's the going rate? You pay me $1,500, I'll put you in touch. All right, here. You pay him the money, he puts you in touch with the steroid dealer. He tells you, yeah, I got some clear, I got some HGH, I got some anabolic steroids. I got something that'll make you run as fast as Jesse Owens and jump as high as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, all in the same medical dose. You want to be able to throw a football like Tom Brady? You want to be able to play the game of tennis like Andre Agassi? You've come to the right place, buddy. What are you looking to do? You're looking to lift weights. You want to be real big and ripped. You want to look like Hulk Hogan. You want to look like Sylvester Stallone. Who you want to look like? All right? So they lay out this menu and the guy just goes, look, I just want my boy to grow 6 inches over the next 4 years. Well, here's some HGH. We'll do doses of this every month for the next 4 years. This is what it'll cost. And your boy will reach 6'6". He might reach 6'8". And he'll be the only 18-year-old on the basketball court so tall he doesn't have to jump to slam dunk the basketball. Of course the father's going to go for that. So that's the impetus, ladies and gentlemen, to this boy growing from 6 foot to 6'6" over the next 4 years. The impetus is steroids. Okay? The impetus is what speeds up a process that you don't want to wait for. Scapegoating, ladies and gentlemen, is when you find somebody to blame a problem on, or you find somebody to use as a starting point for an action. Let's say an 18-year-old boy who lives in the suburbs, who comes from a family who doesn't own guns, say, Mom, Dad, I want to purchase a Glock. And not just any Glock. I want a modified Glock with an extended clip that holds 400 bullets. I want it to be modified so when I squeeze the trigger, it shoots like an automatic rifle. If the parents don't believe in guns, or if the parents aren't the type of people that want guns in the house, they'll probably look at each other like, what is this kid on? Maybe the kid has his own reasons for wanting that gun. Maybe the kid just wants to show it off to people. Maybe he thinks the girls will find it hot. Maybe he thinks his friends will find it cool. Maybe he thinks it'll legitimately keep him safer. But regardless of what his reason is, he wants a gun. He wants his parents to buy it for him because he can't afford it himself. The parents don't want him to have a gun because, well, they don't believe in guns and they don't like the idea of having one in the house. So what happens? The parents talk about it and they come back to the boy and they say, we've decided not to allow you to have that gun. The boy, respectful of his parents, says, thank you for deliberating, and walks away. Now the boy needs a scapegoat. The boy needs a reason to buy that gun now. He needs to convince his parents beyond their objection, not only do I want a gun, okay, you've already established that. He wants to establish why he needs a gun. He reads up on the Second Amendment rights. He reads up on what it means to have a concealed carry permit. He reads up on what it means to keep your gun in a safe place. He reads up some materials on what it means to have a firearm for home defense purposes. He looks up a few firearm safety instructors who also do the concealed carry permit tests. He looks up what it would cost to obtain a concealed carry permit at his local sheriff's department. Once all is said and done, now the scheming boy needs a scapegoat. How do I convince my parents to let me have this gun? This gun will make my life safer. It'll make me cooler with my friends. That hot girl that I like, she thinks I'm so boring. Maybe if I had a gun on me, she would look at me as her protector or something. Yes, these are the kinds of things that teenagers think, ladies and gentlemen. We've all been there. So this boy needs to find a scapegoat. So what he does is he looks out in the park and he sees a bunch of guys that look like they might be on the wrong side of the track. Or from the wrong side of the track. They look a little rough around the edges, like they might have been to jail a few times. The boy walks up to him and he starts insulting them. What do the knuckleheads do? They get up and challenge him to a fight. The boy says to the people in the park, he goes, I can't fight all of you. It's just me. There's 6 of you. They say to him, you should have thought about that before you just insulted us and called us names. The boy says, I think I'll be going now, and he runs away much faster than they can catch him. So he gets away. When he goes across the street, he calls 911 and says to dispatch, I was just chased by a bunch of people in the park. They threatened to kill me. I want to do a police report. I'm scared for my life. I'm scared for my safety. I'm scared for the safety of my family. They say, go to a safe place, give us the description of the people, and wait on the officer. So the boy does all of the above, and when the officer arrives, he explains the situation. The officer calls more officers, and they do a search. The boy is given a police report with a case number on it, and he goes about his way. The boy goes back home with a terrified look on his face and the police report card that the officer gave him, and goes to his parents. You'll never believe what happened to me today, Mom and Dad. They go, well, what happened? You look as if you've seen a ghost. He said, I went to the park just minding my own business, and a bunch of guys down there jumped up and ran towards me when they saw me, and they tried to rob me, and they threatened to kill me. The parents looked horrified and said, well, what did you do? The boy says, I went and called the police and did a report. Here's the case card right here, Mom and Dad. The concerned parents look at the case card, and then they look at each other and ask the boy, is he okay? He said, yeah, I'm okay. He goes to bed that night knowing he did what he needed to do to try to convince his parents, that he needs that weapon. He found his scapegoat, ladies and gentlemen. The rough-looking characters in the park were the scapegoat. They were the jumping off point. They were the catalyst that he needed to convince his parents that he needed a gun, even though he's the one that started the altercation with them. He was able to manipulate the scenario to make it look like they were the aggressors and that he was afraid for his life. The next morning, the boy wakes up and walks downstairs and talks to his parents during breakfast and says, "How about that gun, Mom and Dad? I could get a concealed carry permit. It would keep me safe in times like these. Furthermore, if anything like that were to happen around the house, I could keep us safe. Because in order to get that permit, I'd have to take a firearm safety class and learn how to shoot properly." The two parents, scratching their heads, still shocked and flustered from what had happened to their son, reluctantly agreed to allow him to purchase that firearm so long as he takes the safety course and obtains a concealed carry permit with it. The boy got his wish. He found his scapegoat. Now, ladies and gentlemen, gang stalking, just like the father wanting to get his kids up to 6'6", and just like the boy who wanted to obtain a firearm, uses impetus and scapegoats against a targeted individual's life. With respect to the father who wanted his son to grow, his impetus, okay, the fast and easy way to something, of getting his son to that height so he'd be more college ready, more pro ready, was giving him HGH, even though it was illegal. And the boy who wanted the firearm, who needed to convince his parents that he needed one, not just wanted one, had to find a scapegoat, those in the park, to illustrate to his parents why he needed a gun. What are some of the impetuses and scapegoats that gang stalkers, undercover operatives, and liaisons use to pester, target, harass, disrupt, and spread germs to targeted individuals? Well, let's take violence narratives, for example. That's a impetus. Let's say you want to let's say you're a liaison or an undercover operative, and your instruction is to use every resource you have to disrupt the movements, the life, and the career of a targeted person. You don't know why. Some shadowy federal element convinced you it was the right thing to do. Well, how do you convince your liaisons that this person needs to be disrupted, surveilled, and pestered all day, every day? Well, what would be the impetus to that? Just say he's violent. You don't need to observe that person's behavior if you're a liaison. If you're an undercover, if you're a stalker, you don't need to observe his behavior and find out for yourself what kind of person he is. Just use a false narrative and put out an alert among all the liaisons, stalkers, and undercovers in the area. This signal means this person is violent, period. So anytime a liaison, an undercover, or a stalker sees that signal, they know that the person they're watching is allegedly violent. But like I say, gang stalkers don't need evidence of this. Matter of fact, gang stalkers would rather not have the evidence. They like the mystery of pestering people that they just have no clue about. It's like, I wonder what this guy will do if I do this. Or I wonder what that person will do if I do that. Or I wonder if this guy will get upset if I use this tactic on him. Or I wonder if that woman will get angry if I use this tactic on her. Some of it is just observation of human behavior, the observation and the data collection of human behavior. So the impetus to making people suspicious of a person, even to the point of descending upon that person in mob-like groups, just say they're violent. That's the quick way to make that person suspicious. Okay, and what's the scapegoat? What do you do about those liaisons, those undercovers, those stalkers who just don't know? I just don't know. That person you guys have signaled me to, he doesn't look like he'd cause anybody any harm. He looks like a pretty decent guy. Are you sure? You want me to walk up to him and try and instigate some sort of an altercation with him here and now? Okay? Maybe that stalker gets taken off assignment. Liaisons, undercovers, and stalkers don't like people who ask too many questions. If they point you to somebody, you're supposed to go over and pester them right away or disrupt them. If I point you to that house, you better burglarize it. If I point you to that car, you better vandalize it. If I point you to that child, you better walk past him and try to make him fall down and lose his balance. If I point you to that guy, you better walk past him awkward when he's going down the stairs so you can try and make him fall. If I point you to that person and you're in your car, using basically your signaling mechanisms, your vehicular signaling mechanisms, you better dart in front of that person with your car. Don't worry about if we're right or wrong about him. I've signaled you. I've used a state-sanctioned signaling mechanism to signal you to that person. That means you are to come in close contact with that person. You are to use extreme caution, and you are to find a way to derail that person psychologically while you're on patrol. Okay? I've oftentimes compared gang stalkers to unpaid patrolmen. Okay? Now, it's not necessarily like what I've done for the past 6 months. In my further investigation into gang stalkers' behavior, I myself have done citizen patrol in Kendall, Florida, particularly in the Olympic Park area for about 6 months. That's semi-law enforcement in nature. I work closely or fairly closely with various Miami-Dade County Sheriff deputies with respect to relaying suspicious activity in the area, etc., etc. But I've learned a ton about gang stalking while doing this, and that was the primary reason why I decided to do it. Okay, let's look, ladies and gentlemen, at the impetus and the scapegoats that undercover operatives and gang stalkers use to target people with. What is the impetus, for example, of targeting somebody at work? Maybe you could sabotage their work performance by making them do tasks that they're not totally prepared for. And if they don't do the task quite right, you can scold them in front of everybody and write a report about them to your boss saying that they lack the skills needed to do their job. There are people who gang stalk on the job, and there are people that do workplace mobbing on the job here in the United States to eliminate competition in the workplace. This new kid that comes in, he's starry-eyed. You think he thinks he's going to climb the corporate ladder. You've been here for a while. You know the game. You want to use this kid essentially as a springboard for your own career. This kid doesn't appear to know signaling or nothing, so you conspire with your coworkers using signaling mechanisms while at work to sabotage this young man's work career, so that there's one less person to worry about when the next promotion is available. You have less people competing with you for that promotion. What's the impetus of getting rid of that kid? Well, the impetus or the fast track is to make it look like he doesn't know his job. You could wait 3, 4, or 5 years and see if he knows his job or not, if he can perform his job or not, if he's good enough at what he does. But that would take too long. You want to get rid of him now, and you have the resources and the signaling mechanisms to do it. You and your cohorts that work in the same office as this kid. The impetus is to make him look incompetent, so you can find ways to do that quickly, even if you use deception. And the scapegoat is, well, maybe we can make it look like this kid has a bad attitude. So when we write him up, we can put that on there as well. Nobody wants to work with somebody with a bad attitude. That means he might be hostile or violent. There's your scapegoat right there. You can cause the kid to lose his temper, or you can cause the kid to become frustrated, or you can cause the kid, using a combination of workplace bobbing and clandestine signaling with your co-workers, who are your co-conspirators here, to derail the kid. We can make him look incompetent, and then we can make it look like he has a bad attitude. Then we can go to HR. Then we can go to the regional vice president, and we can explain why we don't think this kid is good for this company at all. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the impetus and the scapegoat for selecting a targeted individual? Well, first of all, you got to follow the money. The military-industrial complex gets $2 trillion a year from the American taxpayer to essentially provide the personnel, weapons, and training, the personnel, weapons, training, and technology to operate the Department of Defense, which is our military apparatus. Some people might say, well, $2 trillion a year, that sounds reasonable. Maybe it does. I mean, you can never be too safe, right? And it's up to America to decide how much it wants to spend on the military-industrial complex. $2 trillion a year, that's more than every other country in the world. No other country in the world spends that much. Okay. Ever since the days of the Revolutionary War, which was fought between the United States and the British Empire, which I should add that the British Empire has the distinction of having been the largest empire in the history of humanity. The British Empire was 3 or 4 times the size of the Roman Empire. And that's to Britain's credit. I mean, this was in medieval times onward into the 1800s, so, or the early 1900s rather. So there's nothing to be ashamed of having an empire. Britain had a very powerful empire, and that's something that Britain should be proud of. Any country who's ever been the centerpiece of an empire should be proud. Any country. And Britain didn't want these upstart pilgrims, or the descendants of upstart pilgrims, breaking away from them in such a brazen manner and founding their own country. And that was part of the clash of the titans, as you might say, between the United States and Britain. Ladies and gentlemen, I digress. What is the impetus and the scapegoat for the continued pestering of targeted individuals? Well, you could basically paint them as a nuisance. You can paint them as hostile. You can paint them as uncouth. You can paint them as deviant. And there are ways through the street theater mechanism to make a person look deviant. For example, let's say you have a community that has a signaling mechanism that they are just dying to use. Because what fun is having these signaling mechanisms and the surveillance technology and all of the things that it takes to make a gang stalking campaign run? What's the fun in all this if you can't use it on people? So maybe they nitpick something, okay? Maybe they see a guy sitting in the park that's not familiar and they go, you know what? Let's try and find a way to instigate something with this guy so we'll have a reason to use our gang stalking tactics. are signaling mechanisms, are disruption mechanisms and protocols. Let's try and nitpick something. So you see a guy sitting in the park and you signal one of your curvier women to walk past him. Now here's the game. We want to see how this guy reacts to that woman who's going to walk past him. Will he try to talk to her? Will he just stare at her? Will he be a gentleman? Will he try to put his hands on her? What kind of man is this? Right? Let's signal one of our most curvy women to walk past him and make sure she has on something revealing too. We want to see what kind of guy this is. Oh yes, they test targets in this way, ladies and gentlemen, using the street theater mechanism. So the guy's sitting there in the park, he's enjoying his day, he's drinking his bottled water, maybe he's eating his Doritos, he's looking at the lake, he's enjoying the nature. And up walks this curvaceous woman in a sundress that hugs all her curves. She's an adult, he's an adult, they're in a public place. She walks by, or she's walking by, he looks her up and down and continues drinking his soda. The people watching in the houses across the pond using binoculars see the man looking her up and down, and they take great offense to that because after all, who is this guy to look the women in this community up and down? How dare he look at that woman in such a way? There are children and teenagers within the area. How dare he act in such an ungentlemanly fashion? We're gonna punish that bastard. And then they sent a pack of signalers his way to get in his face and almost hit him with a golf ball, and they're throwing footballs in front of him, and whoops, one of the footballs slips out of the guy's hand and nearly crashes into the man's head while he's taking in nature. And next thing you know, some guy runs by him on an electric scooter and nearly runs the guy's foot over. Next thing you know, there's 2 or 3 people riding around him in circles on bicycles. There's people who just happen to need to blow their nose within 5 feet of them now all of a sudden. All of these pesterers are signaled to this guy by a liaison. The scapegoat was, well, he looked that woman up and down. That means he's a pervert. We don't want no perverts in this community. This is a good, clean community. We don't condone that kind of stuff here. I didn't like the way he looked at her, frankly. That's not the way a gentleman conducts himself out in public. We're in a public place, for goodness sakes. I'm going to call somebody. We're going to have to do something about this. This is not the kind of person we want around here. So, the signaling starts. The phone calls start. What's the impetus to getting rid of this guy quickly? The impetus is, well, we'll swarm him with stalkers until he gets annoyed and leaves. That's why the guy who was on the electric scooter was signaled to ride past him at close range, nearly running over his foot. That's why the bicyclists were signaled by a third party to ride their bicycles around the man a few times to sort of grab his attention. That's why the people throwing the football back and forth were signaled to throw the football in such a way to where it nearly hits the guy. That's why the people who were signaled over to his exact location, who were kicking the soccer ball back and forth, were signaled in such a way by a clandestine third party to kick the soccer ball near the guy so as to just miss him. Oh yes, you can signal stalkers to throw projectiles at another person. You can pretend you're throwing a football with your friend. a frisbee with your friend, a soccer ball with your friend. But all the while you've been signaled to clumsily miss the soccer ball, clumsily miss the frisbee, clumsily miss the football, or clumsily miss the basketball so that it bounces near the target in such a way that might startle him. That's the impetus, ladies and gentlemen, of getting rid of the target. It is to pester him. The scapegoat of getting rid of the target is he's a pervert, he's a prowler, he's a misfit, he's a deviant. He just looked at that woman up and down as she walked past him. He's not the kind of person we want around here. That is the scapegoat. That false narrative is the scapegoat. And ladies and gentlemen, the narrative does not have to be true. The target doesn't even have to be looking the woman up and down. The target could be looking at a bird that had just flown by her. Or maybe there was somebody kayaking in the river and he looked over and saw the kayaker, and the kayaker was in the general vicinity of that woman. Maybe he looked at a turtle swimming across the lake or river on top of the water, and the turtle happened to have been swimming towards the woman, and he looked down at the turtle and it looked like he was looking at the woman. You see, stalkers, ladies and gentlemen, don't go that deep into the matter. When they set up a scenario, when they set up street theater, they go off what their instincts tell them. Well, the guy looks like a predator to us, so we're going to descend upon him. Our liaison has given us all the signals we need, and we're going to use these signals in a covert and clandestine fashion to get rid of that guy because, quite frankly, we think that guy is some sort of a cat burglar or something. He looks like a peeping Tom. We don't like how he just looked at that woman. We're going to use these mechanisms to get rid of him. Do you see? Gang stalkers need impetus and scapegoat to operate. They need a reason to speed up the process. They don't like doing a lot of observing. They like acting quickly because that's what's fun. What's the point of being a gang stalker if you have to do all this research before you can act? Liaisons, undercovers, and stalkers like action. That's why they do what they do. They don't like sitting around and just monitoring people. They want to take action on the person. So they need an impetus, something that's going to speed up the action. Well, let's find somebody to collide into him on a bike or something and see if he gets hostile. If he gets hostile, that means he's violent. If we can mark this guy as violent, then we can descend upon him with every kind of signal we got to get rid of him. The scapegoat is how he reacts to the collision. Maybe they signal a skateboarder to run over the guy's legs while he's sitting there. If the guy gets up and cusses the boy out, maybe he calls him a punk or a sissy as the boy rides off into the night on the skateboard, having run the guy's legs over. Maybe one of the liaisons or the undercovers or the stalkers in the area that are assigned to this man hear that language and go, he reacted with hostility to that guy that ran him over with the skateboard. Let's descend upon him with everything we got. His reaction wasn't unusual. I don't think anybody would want to say a word or two to someone who is that clumsy or aloof, or perhaps mischievous to where they run you over with a skateboard while you're sitting down in a public place. That doesn't make you violent, it makes you frustrated. You see, the scapegoat is your reaction. The impetus is the interaction with the stalker on the skateboard. Let's speed this thing up, guys. We want to use our signals on this guy. He's been out there for an hour and a half now. We've seen the way he's looked at people. We don't want him around. Let's get an impetus going. Let's find somebody to harass him. If he goes off on the person, we'll mark him as violent and we'll descend upon him with everything we got. The impetus is the skateboarding collision. The scapegoat is your reaction to the skateboarding collision. That's all stalkers need. That's all undercovers need. That's all liaisons need. They need an impetus. They need a scapegoat, and a false narrative or two never hurts. Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen.